The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle with ASU strike.
Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle with ASU strike.
Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
You join us here on Global Morning. You know what they say about Fridays? Well, most people believe that great weekends begin on a Friday. So hopefully you make yours as great as it can be. I'm Muyi Agmofwigwe. And also on the show.
I like the intro. All right, good morning, TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. I am Jumai Manson. It's great to be on the program with, of course, we are Gomofwegbe. And I hope we have an amazing ride today. It's a weekend.
Right.
People are mostly preparing for weddings. I know there are like 5 weddings lined up for tomorrow. Like, well, let's just see how well it plays out. But let's just focus on what is happening now in the country.
It's quite an interesting time to be alive, and people are making the most of whatever it is that they're pursuing. Yes, the hurdles are always going to be there, regardless of those hurdles and the obstacles and all of the challenges. Is only fair to ourselves, first of all, that we just continue to push and take it all in our strides. Back at home in Nigeria, people have been railing against the 50% tariff hike on telecom services, while the operators had asked for a 100% hike in tariff, because they say that look, the cost of running business has shot up several folds, and it's only natural that we also look at what we can do differently from our end to ensure that we keep these businesses afloat. One of the concerns most Nigerians, consumers, including myself, had at the initial point was when some of the executives in the telecom sector said, look, we have 2 options at this point in time, right? We either have to allow a 100% increase in tariff. In other words, if Jumai was paying 100 naira for a certain service, she now has to pay 200. That's one option. The other option is we'll have to stagger our services so that we can enjoy service from maybe 6 in the morning till 6 in the evening. We'll switch away from him to Jumai, who now enjoys it from 6 in the evening till 6 the next morning. So we put these 2 options in front of Nigerians. Now it will appear that the ball in the court of we and Jumai, and the federal government on our behalf now says, well, we have approved 50% increase.
Well, of course, a lot of people are not happy with that increment. But as long as we're getting value for our money, though, let it be better than what we used to experience. There was no data failure at the point where you need to make a transfer. It's either, in the words of the layman, it's either hanging or something. But as long as, if there is a 50% increment, are we getting value for our money? That's number one option. And 2, is it just going to be, some of these network providers, I don't want to mention the name, they tell you you have you have extra data. I don't know if you've experienced that, and nothing comes out of it. It's just there, and you're not using, and you wonder, and then when you're running out of data, and you're like, but I have like 2 point something, and what's happening? And you're cutting me off. So that's a little bit of exploitation there.
Right.
But as long as there is a 50% increment, and we're getting value for our money's worth, and there's a smooth sale of, I can make a phone call, I can call my parents, I can call my loved ones, I can call family, friends, members smoothly, seamlessly, no problem at all. I think there's no problem with that as long as I'm getting value for my money. It's worth. It's very important. But some would tell you, let it be pay as you. You know, of course, pay as you go. I can roll over. You cannot roll over data. That's the worst part of it. So, are there any benefits attached to this 50% increment? I really need to know, because sometimes when you recharge for a month, whether you use it or not, or you're active or you're inactive, the next month you still have to recharge. So that's a very serious problem that we really need to look into. But that 50% increment, as long as I get values worth and there's some benefits attached to it, I don't think there's a problem to that at all.
You see, that's one of the challenges. I mean, you talked about running over data. Well, my service provider says I can run over my data. So with my data,
how true is it,
what I've found out is this, because I like to get a bit scientific about these things. In fairness to my provider, they allow me to roll over, because I noticed, for example, when my service window cycles out, they tell me, well, your data has expired. However, you have such amount of gig left unused. You have to buy the same exact package or bundle, right, for you to be able to roll over whatever data you have left.
And you see nothing wrong with that,
No, here's the thing. I mean, for example, there's a 30-day data plan,
window,
right? So you buy a 30-day data plan. Of course, it cycles out in 30 days. So let's assume it's a 20 gig data you bought. I mean, let's just break it down a little for the benefit of our viewers. So this is me buying a 20 gig data valid for 1 month. Of course, that's a 30-day period. Now, let's assume I don't use it much. So at the end of the day, I still have like 8 gig left. But now, this is the 31st day. What it means is I can't use that data anymore. However, my subscriber, I don't know about others, my service provider, I can't speak for others, says to me, your 8 gig balance, as it were, can be rolled over. However, you have to buy the same exact plan. So I buy that plan, I roll it over to the next 30 days. I think that's fair enough, because every data plan, yes, every data should have a time window. For example, if you buy a 30-day plan, it's for 30 days, right? So if you don't use it, finish it in 30 days, it means you have lost that window. However, they reserve it for you somewhere. And then the caveat for being able to access it is, you, of course, it's just like a satellite service, for example. And I think in this regard, telecom service is better than satellite service, because the satellite service, once your 1 month window closes or cycles out, you can't carry it over, because it's a question of, we don't care whether you use it or not. If you subscribe your satellite, your pay TV service, and you travel for 1 month,
of course,
by the time you come back, you have to deal with that.
Yes,
resubscribe. But with data service, for my subscriber, my operator, my service provider,
yes,
they say we have this amount of data left. You can roll it over, add it to whatever you like. But in all of this, there's something the Minister of Finance said, which is instructive, but it's not really spectacular. It says, while Nigerians will have to scratch their skin, I'm not using his words exactly, but this is the import of his message, the service providers themselves must, across board, give value, money's worth, to the consumer.
Very important.
But Mr. Wale Edun, the Honorable Minister for Economy and the Coordinating Minister for everything about the economy, all right, shied away. I think he did that deliberately, was strategic, from acknowledging that it was the removal of fuel subsidy that was not systematically done that led us to where we are today, because he kept hammering on inflation numbers. Yes, inflation doesn't stand alone. I'm not an economist. Let's create that caveat too. But there's what they call common sense economics, right? If you like, you call it the traditional economics. How did we get to inflation numbers of 34 point whatever it is percent? It started from that point where you removed subsidy. And Nigerians said, we really don't have a problem with you removing subsidy. However, what plans or what measures did you put in place to cushion the impacts that will naturally, without a doubt, come with that suspension of subsidy payments? What Nigerians, discerning Nigerians, expected Mr. Edwin to have at least acknowledged, maybe in passing, is to say, look, we understand that this whole issue about the telecom service providers saying that we have a problem running our businesses started because we removed subsidy payments. However, this is the extra we're also doing from our end as a government. So make it easier for Nigerians to feel the, if you like, minimal bites from this tariff hike that's coming with the service, the telecom service they enjoy. We can spend the whole program talking about that, but economics never end, and
it doesn't.
That's part of our conversation.
But for me, when you're looking at the masses, a lot of people, you're patient enough to go through all of the details when it comes to rolling over.
My job calls for it.
I know, you're patient, but there's so many Nigerians out there who do not have that time to actually look at it with the, you do not have.
T's and C's, terms and conditions.
The terms and conditions, exactly. It's not everyone that has that time. People just, once I see that, I will speak for a lot of people because I think many of us fall in that class. Once we see that, not even accept, we reach out and we forget about the rolling over, and that's why it accumulates. And that is why we must get service for our money with this 50%. Create more awareness and tell us, like you just explained it now. Like if you have 20 gig right now and you need to roll over, you have 8 more gig, you have to subscribe the same amount to get your 8 gig back to roll over.
Exactly.
Like, see, many people say I'm not patient enough to start reading all of that. I just reach out and I just keep blaming the service.
And you jump on the internet.
Exactly. So you need to create more awareness and tell us, okay, listen, when we say you are rolling over your data, this is what you have to do. Spell it out. A lot of people do not know. Like, really, many Nigerians, we're all in a hurry. Look at the economy. People are thinking about a lot of things. The hike in electricity tariff. Look at the fuel, the imbalance in fuel at the moment. A lot of things. The hike in food, insecurity. A lot of things. So no one has time to go through their phones and, I don't have data, let me just quickly subscribe. Not knowing that I have data that I can actually roll over with the 50. Well, hope the needful should be done. It's very important. And for me, I always say, let me get what's there. If you can just, once I subscribe, roll over my data. Must I go through all those process of recharging the same amount again? So all these are benefits. So it's very important we look into it, especially with the 50% increment.
Right. You know, a very prominent cleric in this country once referred to big corporations, including in telecoms, you know, as what he called corporate buccaneers. You know, because the tendency to exploit is always there. Tendency to exploit the consumers is always there. But you see, the good book says the law is made for the lawless. Right, you must have systems in place in society. That's why, basically, for example, we have traffic lights to control traffic, even though that in itself is a challenging discussion. We have the Nigerian Communications Commission. All right, your mandate does not end with just selling, whatever it is, selling to telecom operators, right? It doesn't end with just sending them notices and circulars on issues from time to time, right? You have to keep the tabs on them. You have to regulate them in the strictest sense. Of course, that's not to say you, as it were, you strangle them. No, it means that you have to make sure that there's a win-win atmosphere for the operators and, of course, the consumers as well. That's for the NCC. And then you have the FCCPC, the Federal Consumer Protection Commission, the FCCPC. Now, these are the guys who are supposed to be on the consumer side, so to speak. They are the ones who are supposed to say, look, this person paid XYZ to so-and-so service. But what we realize is that they only enjoyed about 65% of it. What happens to the other 35%? And then you hold the service providers to accounts. So how effective are we being on these fronts?
Exactly.
So it's pretty much the same question we're asking about, CBN, when it has to do with the commercial banks in particular. How is it that I go to my ATM terminals, my own bank ATM terminals, I can find cash. But the guy around the corner in my neighborhood who operates a point of sales terminal has minutes.
Exactly.
Right? So
exactly.
Who is lying to who? Is there something the CBN is not saying? Is the CBN handicapped in some way? These are typical questions Nigerians want answers to, like yesterday morning.
It's just unfortunate that this is where we find ourselves in the country. I feel we have a lot to do when it comes to nipping it in the bud, when it comes to corruption. I think it's there. It's in the system. It's going to take a long time for it to go away. And it's not going away very soon. But we need to set a pace. We need to set an example, which is very important. And that is why I said monitoring committees need to be erected in order for us to move forward in this country. We need individuals that will monitor these various sectors that has to do with us as a Nigerian Nigerian. So we know we're moving forward, but it's just that it's on a the pace is really, really slow, and we have a long way to go. Well, when I say long, you see how I stretch the long. We really do.
Sounds like a long trip.
Yes, it does. But hopefully, like I always say, I'm patriotic. I'm a Nigerian to the core, happier Nigerian. Let's just keep hope alive and see that things become better. So we don't want to actually bore you or scare you. It's Friday. It's supposed to be a time to relax during the weekend and not to give you that hypertension. But don't worry, all is well. We'll be fine. Everything is going to be okay. Let's be hopeful. Keep hope alive.
All right, so this is that point where we take a quick break now, everyone. When we return, it will be time to look at the big headlines across our national dailies for you here on Global Morning. Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and internationals.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
going to bring you papers, distant time. But this issue of the tariff hike on telecom services appears to be growing wings every other hour, because right now we're hearing that, of course, the NCC, that's the Nigerian Communications Commission, the regulator of the sector, will be meeting with the telecoms operators today, that's the service providers. That's on the one hand. Let's see how that meeting turns out. Apparently, it's a no-brainer that one of the highlights from that meeting will be putting structure and modality in place just to drive this new hike and how the structure is going to go, because it will affect the cost of your calls, the cost of your
exactly. It's not going to come cheap.
Cost of your data and all of that. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, Labour is also planning what they now call a showdown, because the Nigeria Labour Congress in particular says that this is ill-timed, because its position is that Nigerians are already dealing with so much hardship, so you want to make a bad situation worse. So they're saying we want to mobilize subscribers, mobilize workers, mobilize Nigerians to take to the streets and protest this hike. You are not going to protest, are you?
I cannot. I cannot. But at the same time, like I said, everyone needs to come to a round table, let's be sure. But really, what the NLC is saying is apt. At this point, Nigerians are going through a lot. We're really dealing with a lot. And then with all these hikes keep coming over and over again, we're still dealing with the grid, the collapse of the grid. We're not done with that yet. We're still into that, and then more things keep coming up again and again and again. Really, Nigerians are going through a lot, but I think there is a way around it. It could be a 50-50 thing that Nigerians won't really feel much of the burden, at least to make things light. Like he mentioned, Nigerians are going through a lot, and if it's protesting is the only way to get our voice out there for the needful to be done, as long as it's not violent and it's civil, I think I don't see a problem.
All right. That's
me.
We can't speak for all Nigerians, but we do know that this is now a matter of putting your money where your mouth is, in such a way that for every naira you spend, you're getting commensurate value. But the telecom service providers must also know for sure that to whom much is given, much is expected. You can't get a 50% hike on tariff and then we are still dragging you left, right, and center to provide quality service, to provide service that is above mediocre or above board, as they say, and all of that. Then the NCC has more work to do now. The Federal Consumer Protection Council also needs to realize that it's much more demand now is placed on it. All right, to not only sensitize Nigerians about their rights in this regard in particular, but to also remind the service providers that they are under obligation to ensure that they deliver the services that they've promised, and making them realize that there's a stick and carrot approach to addressing all of these issues. We go on another break, and after this time out, we'll bring you the paper headlines.
Right, you are welcome back. It's still Global Morning on Global Television, and at about this point is a newspaper review. And we'll be starting with the first paper, which is the Guardian newspaper. And below the nameplate of the Guardian newspaper, it says Heroes of Schools Sports. And here you can find that big story on page 4 and 5. It says, and the star story there on the Guardian says, how Nigerian can leverage tertiary institutions' untapped talents. And that's a big story there. Please go out and get yourself a copy of the Guardian to find that read on page 4 and page 5. And it says, Junta led Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger to unveil common passport. And international stories here says Trump's tariffs, new trade barriers unsettle world leaders' agencies. And you can find that read on page 6 of The Guardian. And it says here inflation, that's a picture of Cardoso there. And it says here inflation, 13 million more Nigerians at risk of falling between poverty line in 2025, says reports. That's a very sad read there. And it says, Ondo government diffuses tension as cows allegedly destroy 265 million naira crops. And you can get that read on page 28 of The Guardian. Now, on the foot of The Guardian says, over 20 killed as bandits, Boko Haram faction clash. Unfortunately, we keep going back and forth with insecurity, especially when it comes to the northeast of Nigeria. And here it says inflation, debt burden may hinder Nigerians' economic recovery, LCCI warned. You can find that read on page 7. Federal government disburses 6.18 billion naira student loan approves, 4 billion naira for vulnerable households. And below all of that it says fuel tanker explosion, why federal government should mandate life insurance for victims. Very important. I think we don't have much of that in Nigeria when it comes to life insurance. We hear more of car insurance, but life insurance, we've not seen much of that lately in Nigeria. I don't think we take it seriously. We don't hold it very tightly. I think it's international countries that actually take that very seriously when it comes to life, but mostly Nigeria, we don't really...
I think with life insurance policy, it's more of, you're asking yourself, to what extent has insurance as a phenomenon penetrated in Nigeria? There has to be, look at telecom services, for example, GSM as we call it. All right, it started in 2001 here, of course you have former President Olusegun Obasanjo and all of that. And look at what the penetration has been like. Internet penetration, but let's not forget about telephony. Let's talk about internet penetration. It has always been an increase. But the question is, can you say the same of insurance? You can't. Right?
You can't at all.
If someone bumps into your car, for example, or it happens the other way around, what does the insurance company do? Do you even have insurance, for example?
Exactly. What do they cover?
Third-party insurance, and all of that. I think there's some truth. We're not telling ourselves about these things. Somebody said just this last Sunday that it is curious to find out, right? How is it that phenomena that work everywhere else in the world, you bring them to Nigeria, they don't seem to work? It means we have a systemic issue we have not addressed here. We have to tackle, and we have to take responsibility beyond just the government to fix all of these, including insurance.
And the truth is, aside all of these things, if we look at it critically, we have a lot of awareness to do. A lot of people do not understand the importance of life insurance and how it works. I think that system, people need to really understand it, and those that are in that position need to break it down to understand the benefits of life insurance and all other insurance policies which are beneficial to us as Nigerians. People will tell you, when you mention insurance, they say, no, it's for that big man. It has nothing to do with the average Nigerian. Or someone will tell you, you want me to talk about insurance when I've not put food in my stomach. So people need to create that awareness and teach us and tell us the benefit and why it is important. Life insurance should be included and made a lot of noise out of. It's very important. So of course we will be taking us to the next paper, which is the
Matrix. Let's see what we have there. The Matrix newspaper this morning. We begin with the story above the name masts. Says Nigeria's FX reserves declined by 832.362 million in 2 weeks. Nigeria's FX reserves declined by $832.62 million in 2 weeks. Quite significant decline there. All right, what's more, Finidi urges Ian Acho to dump Sevilla over poor treatment. A global trade war looms as Trump talks tough. Of course, anybody who wants to believe that he was never going to turn out this way was just living in denial, because it is Trump 2.0, remember. All right, but that headline has two riders with it. The first one reads, make your products in America or pay tariffs, Trump threatens. Okonjo-Iweala warns double-digit global GDP losses loom if. Well, read up those details for yourself on page 3 of today's issue of the Matrix newspaper. All right, CBN to launch new compliance departments to strengthen financial sector. And then the Star headline reads, Tinubu reiterates commitments to the welfare of armed forces, with quite a number of riders there accompanying that headline. Hails troops' dedication, courage, resilience to protect our freedom, says Defense Complex, national monuments every Nigerian would be proud of. A court declares Lakurawa sex terrorist group bans operations nationwide. Police rescue AIG Odumosu's wife after a gunfight with kidnappers. That's former, AIG Hakim Odumosu, also former Commissioner of Police, Lagos State, whose wife had been kidnapped, and now here she has regained her freedom. 8 billion naira budget allocation for anti-vandalism efforts, steady power supply. That is credited to Minister of Power, Chief Adebayo Adelabu. Telecom tariff hike, that's your kicker, subscribers to meet NCC today. And then lastly, on the fruits of the Matrix newspaper, Trevor Noah to host 2025 Grammy Awards for 5th consecutive year. Talk about back-to-back gigs for Trevor. All right, read all those details for yourself. When you pick up a copy of the Matrix newspaper, you'll find them on page 21. And that's how we flip over now to the next paper for you.
And the next paper is the Leadership Friday. And besides the name plate of the leadership, it says Nigeria reactivates passport insurance in Atlanta, New York. And you can find that read on page 6 of the Leadership Friday. And the star story there says food insecurity, reps initiate 15 bills to tackle hunger. And we have about 4 riders there. It says 31.8 million Nigerians suffering acute hunger, which is not a lie. It's not far from the truth. Legislate credit facilities, subsidy for farmers. Federal government pledges access to sufficient safe food. Although that's good news that the food is sufficient, and let it be safe also. And there it says Gold Standard Award series, and it says here, basically at the side of that caption, it says former FCT Minister J.T. Hussaini dies at 82. And you can find that read on page 28 of the Leadership Friday. We spent 98 billion naira to restore electricity in the north. That's the voice of Adelabu there, and you can find that read on page 22 of the Leadership Friday. Go out and get yourself a copy and be well informed on the latest news making rounds. Next is the blueprint. Over to you.
All right, let's see what we have from the blueprint newspaper this morning, everyone. Again, we begin with the headline above the nameplate for you. Says NAFDAC destroys 1.367 billion naira substandard products in FCT. General J.T. Hussaini dies at 82. What more do you have here? Says sports. The kicker is AFCON 2025. Chelsea to attempt draw in Morocco. Star Story tells us Nigeria at turning point with renewed hope agenda. Abbas, that's Speaker House of Representatives, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, with 2 riders following that headline, says economy worsened when we dumped agriculture for oil. FG to ensure 65% arable land cultivated within 4 years. And then on the right end of the front page of the Blueprint newspaper today, 116.184 billion Naira student loan disbursed so far. That's according to NEL Fund. Gets 58.4 billion Naira budget envelope for 2025. CBN upbeat on 4.17% GDP growth. In 2025, Nigeria not in hyperinflation, FRC, that's Financial Regulatory Council, Edwin backs Telecom's tariff increase. And then at the foot of the paper, it says 5.4 million children suffer malnutrition in Northwest, Northeast. That one is credited to UNICEF. Only you killing, you are properly convicted, appeal court tells hotelier Adedoyin. Idris Lord's BPP for driving transparency in public procurement. And finally, amidst Tinubu's assurance of better welfare, NAF decimates terrorists in Niger. All right, that's the Nigerian Air Force at work there, decimating terrorists as it should be. Sounds like we're making more progress on that front. But basically, Juba, this part where it says that Tajuddin Abbas, Speaker of the House of Reps, is now saying that economy worsened when we dumped agriculture for oil. I mean, that doesn't come as something it strikes now, because we've heard that time and again. The concern should be what exactly is the government doing practically to gradually help us gravitate back towards agriculture, right? We have leaders, most parts, I mean, for the most part, who want to talk about the problems, who want to reiterate the challenges, the issues, but Nigerians are sick and tired of hearing what the problems are. They now know the issues.
We want solutions.
Even those with next to no education, they know the issues. They're not asking, how do you resolve? How do you change it for the better? So let's not keep talking about oil and agriculture. We know what is happening. Nigerians don't need that education now. It's been overtaken by events. But let's take you to our next paper this morning, everyone. And Juma will bring us those details from the Daily Times.
Yes, and of course, the Daily Times newspaper above the nameplate, it says, NEC announces date for Anambra Global FCT Council poll. And you can find that read on the Daily Times. And below the nameplate, the Star Story there says, Tinubu's tax reform will support Nigeria's revenue drive investment, says Kalu. And you'll find that read on page 2. And below all of that, it says Ganduje prefers solutions to end banditry nationwide. And let's see how well that plays out. And we can find that read on page 9 of the Daily Times. And here it says insecurity threatening Nigerians' food production. And that's the voice of the speaker there. And you can find that read on page 6. And here it says food prices skyrocket by 97%. in 1 year. Southeast hardest hit, and it's just unfortunate, and that's NBS, and you can find that read on page 5. Dare to raise 450 billion naira through FGN bond insurance. And below the foot of the Daily Times, it says police accuses Sterling Bank of money laundering dealings, and you can find that on page 4. Some of these stories are really heartbreaking. It's just unfortunate that this is where we are in the country when it comes to insecurity threatening Nigerians' food production. Of course, we know that when it has to do with banditry and all of that happens, the farmers cannot go and farm in peace and harvest in peace. There's always one thing we heard about farmers that were beheaded by these Lakurawa sect. It's just unfortunate that this is what it is, but hopefully we need to nip this and curb this with immediate effect so that we won't have an issue when it comes to, we're already having a little issue because of the high production of food, but hopefully it won't get as worse as it is now.
Right. All right.
And of course, will you be taking us to the next paper?
All right, let's see what we have from the Nigerian Tribune real quick this morning. We begin with the star story for you. Says Jagba, only 6,000 medical consultants remain in Nigeria. Apparently, these 6,000, as lean as the number is, are dispersed across medical facilities in the country. Just one or two produced annually. 1,700 consultants approaching 60-year retirement age. Those are two riders for you. Let's move things a bit higher up this morning. The headlines above the nameplate, top left corner with a picture of Dr. Tunji Tunjojo, the Minister of Interior here. It says, Interior Minister orders deployment of passport printers in Atlanta, New York consulates. All right, sounds great. So Nigerians over there can also have access to passport replacement and issuance. Ekiti government denies existence of Sharia courts, says no Sharia courts panel in state's judicial structure. Alaafin, kingmakers, priests will decide when to start rites. Professor Abimbola. And then on the left corner of the paper says Timothy Adegoke, appeal court affirms Adedo's death sentence. Transcorp Power posts 115% pre-tax profits to pay full dividends of 37.5 billion naira. 77% of Nigerian women use skin lightening products. That's according to federal government. 77%. That's quite alarming. Does Juma Manson fall in that category?
Do I look light skin to you?
Well, I can't be sure. Answer your question. I can't be sure how your skin was 2-3 years ago.
I've always been this color. Like I've always been.
But is this not really surprising okay, so I spoke with a friend about this 2-3 years ago, and his take on this is that one of the reasons for it is inferiority complex, low self-esteem for people who use this kind of substances, as I like to call them.
Okay.
So, tone up, as they say.
But sometimes it's for you. We do it for most women that are into skin lightening product. They do it for you to look beautiful. We want to look beautiful.
Let's just say they do it for some kind of men.
Some kind of men who like light skinned girls and who
don't like artificially toned.
It's no. Sometimes it's just to light skin. It's just to beautify your skin. It's just to tone it up a bit. Let me use that. But sometimes it's hazardous. It's dangerous when it comes. It's cancerous if you use the wrong product. I saw was it a skit or a video? A woman mixing so many body creams together. It's just unfortunate. But we do it to just beautify ourselves. No, for the women. I speak for the women. Women. I'm never be against you. All of us. We're all in this together.
You have a speaker on the show. Thank you and congratulations.
We're doing it because we need to. But for me, don't do it because it's for someone else. Do it because it makes you feel good.
Right.
It gives you that self-confidence and all. But some people do it because, of course, for you all.
While you're at it, don't hurt yourself. I think that's
don't hurt yourself, please. Don't. It's not worth it. But just be happy.
Let's move ahead, everyone. Here it says. How police rescued ex-AIG's wife from abductors. We understand after the rescue, they took out the abductors. Well, it is what it is now. FG directs WAEC, NECO, others to inscribe NIN, date of birth, photograph on certificates. That's quite interesting. FG directs WAEC, NECO, others to inscribe NIN, date of birth, photograph on certificates. Well, WAEC and NECO had already started the photograph thing some years ago. However, the new items here will be NIN. Date of birth has always been there too. So that's really, when you say inscribe, are you saying it should not be printed? Instead, it should be embossed? Maybe that's the point being made. But let's see how this directive is complied with and what the certificates will look like going forward. But again, times are changing.
Times are changing.
Right. So let's look at the last headline from the Nigerian Tribune today. Alleged 2.8 billion naira fraud. Ex-aviation minister Sarika approved contract for son-in-law's firms that was credited to EFCC witness. Well, I'll pick up this paper and read up details for yourself. But then we have next Daily Independent. That will be our last paper on the program.
Yes, exactly. The Daily Independent here, and above the nameplate says NANS threatens nationwide protest over 50% telecom tariff hike. There's no Sharia court panel in other judicial structure, and that's Ekiti government. And with the nameplate of the Daily Independent, it says, and that's the start story there. It says, we're tackling grid collapse with building of 34 substations. And that's the federal government. Then we have two riders. And it says 8 billion naira in 2025 budget for protection of power infrastructure. And the second rider says, our electricity has reached 3-year high of 5,528 megawatts. And still on the Daily Independent, it says Shatima Abdusalami Atiku Obi to prefer solutions to electoral malpractices. Others. Tinubu assures of his commitment to welfare of Nigerian army, which is a step in the right direction.
Right, it is. It is.
Trying to curb insecurity. Murder of OAU student. Appeal court upholds Adedoyin's death sentence. And it says a Nigerian youth, very resourceful, admired globally. And here it says federal government okays 4 billion naira conditional cash transfer for vulnerable households. Like I always say, it's not about giving out cash transfers to vulnerable households. Teach them how to be creative.
How to fish.
How to fish. It's very important because you can't be going back and forth for every, when the federal government comes out and they say all of these things, it's a replica of what has been happening ever since. They give out cash to vulnerable individuals, and then at the end of the day, is it like a monetary? I always speak because a monetary committee will keep you abreast with what is actually going on. These cash transfers, what are they using it for? Is it just to feed? Is it just to get by 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, and it's done, and they go back? Or you are teaching them how to be productive when it comes to skill. I always say skill is very important. At least some traders will tell you everyday money is very important. You're selling stuff and every day you see something coming from that money, so you can get by and of course increase that particular skill or business in which you're. For as much as this is it's a good initiative, but I think it's better we teach individuals how to, quote and unquote, how to fish instead of giving the fish. I think it will go a long way.
Concern, your point is totally valid, Jomai. I think the real concern is it sustainable?
Exactly.
Right. So we must think the short and long terms of these initiatives that we're pushing. Sometimes they are seen as being politically motivated.
True.
Just to be politically correct, as I say, but we can do better.
Yes, we can. And of course, that's the last paper, that's the last heading on the Daily Independent. Go out and get yourself a copy and be all abreast with stories that are making rounds. And that's it on the newspaper review on Global Television. Of course, it's still Global Morning. Do not go anywhere. Up next is the AM News. Stick around.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily. while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning. Welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to AM News on Global Television. It's coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Jumai Manson. A quick reminder that Global Television is on DSTV channel 365 and free to air on Nicomsat. Now the news in full. The Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development and Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority have been urged to revisit a draft policy proposing stricter sanctions on airlines for the increasing number of flights delays and cancellation across the country. The federal government, through the Central Results Delivery Coordination Unit, made this recommendation during a performance assessment meeting held at the Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development in Abuja. According to the Special Advisor to the President on Policy and Coordination and Head of Unit Adiza Bala Usman, the meeting was part of the ongoing review of the first third quarters 2024 performance assessment report on the implementation of presidential priorities and ministerial deliveries. The Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, has urged the 10,000 newly passed out constables of the Nigerian Police Force to prioritize professionalism, fairness, and friendliness in the discharge of their duties. The police boss delivered this message at the passing out parade of the 2022 batch held at the Police Training School, Bauchi, on Thursday, represented by the Commissioner of Police, Bauchi State Command, Awal Muhammad. Egbetokun stated that the ceremony marked the culmination of a 6-month rigorous training program conducted at 4 premier colleges and 12 police training schools nationwide. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Abbas Tajuddin, says food security is a fundamental right of citizens and not a privilege. He made this known in Abuja while delivering his keynote remark as the guest of honor at the dialogue centered on food security. The Speaker, who was represented by the House Committee Chairman on Nutrition and Food Security, Diko John Okafor, said the National Assembly was committed to a comprehensive allocation for nutrition and food security programs in the country. He lamented that Nigerians faced high rates of malnutrition, particularly among the children, with a significant proportion of them suffering from stunted growth and micronutrient deficiencies. Over now to the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC Mining Marshal have unveiled their strategic operational plans for 2025. The Corps spokesperson Babawale Afolabi made the revelation in a statement stressing that the operational plans will be focusing on intensified field operations, strengthened regulatory compliance, and a renewed campaign against illegal mining activities. Additionally, the Marshal aims to deepen their collaboration with the Mining Cadre Office to enhance effectiveness of their mandate. The National Agency for Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, has disclosed that its operatives have rescued 9 pregnant women from a baby factory in Abuja. This is contained in a statement by the press officer agency Vincent Adekoye in Abuja, revealing that the baby factory is situated at one of the sprawling estates in the Ushafa area in the Federal Capital Territory. He also disclosed that the raid in the facility followed a tip-off from a concerned citizen, adding that the victims were locked up in an apartment inside the estate by a yet-to-be-identified suspected trafficking agent after they were recruited through an online platform. The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, has destroyed fake, adulterated, and unregistered foods, drugs, and cosmetic products worth over 1 billion naira, seized in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. In a brief remark during the exercise, the Director General of NAFDAC, Professor Mojishola Adeyeye, said the destruction exercise is a crucial and routine operation that agency conducts across all zones of the Federation. Professor Adeyeye, represented by the director in her office, Festus Okadike, stated that the goal of the exercise is to eliminate substandard, falsified, and expired NAFDAC-regulated products from the supply chain. The federal government has approved 4 billion naira for conditional cash transfers to vulnerable households in Nigeria, set to commence in February and continue through April. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction, Professor Natawe Yelwada, announced the interventions during the launch of the 2025 Nigerian Humanitarian Needs and Response Plan at the United Nations House in Abuja. He said the initiative is aimed at addressing the country's deepening humanitarian crisis, as it is expected to support at least 10 million displaced households, primarily targeting the most vulnerable members of society. Nigeria's First Lady, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, has lauded the National Youth Service Corps NYSC scheme for its remarkable digital transformation. The First Lady gave the commendation during the official commissioning of the NYSC Digital Museum of Dynamic History and Television Studio in Abuja, praising the initiative as a significant step in modernizing the NYSC. She also emphasized how these innovations will enhance the organization's abilities to showcase its rich history and provide a more engaging platform for future generations of Nigeria. A federal high court in Abuja has cautioned the Inspector General of Police in charge filed against him, Senator Andy Uba, and 2 others over allegations bordering on 400 million naira fraud. Justice Eyang Eko gave the warning after IGP's lawyer MC Anthony replied on the FHC Rules 2019 in a motion ex parte filed to seek an order for substituted service of the charge in Uba and his co-defendants. When the matter was called, Anthony, who announced appearance for the prosecution, told the court that he was holding brief for another counsel. The Lagos State government has issued a 48-hour ultimatum to traders operating under the Agbongbon Bridge and along drainage setbacks in Lagos Island to vacate the areas. The directive is part of the state's urban regeneration initiative aimed at improving infrastructure and tackling environmental challenges. Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources Tokumbo Wahab announces during an inspection of a Savage Elegbeta Bambata drainage channel on. Over now to the Court of Appeal sitting in Akure, the Ondo State capital, has upheld the death sentence slammed on Chief Ramon Adedoyin over the death of Mr. Anthony Adegoke, a student of the Obafemi Awolowo University who was found guilty by an Osun State High Court and subsequently sentenced to death. Adegoke was allegedly killed inside the Hilton Hotels owned by Adedoyin on November 5th, 2021. Justice Adekpele Ojo sentenced Adedoyin and two members of his staff, Adeni Aderogba and Oyetunde Kazim, to death by hanging. Following a report that the Alaafin-elect Prince Akeem Owode had put traditional rites that usually precede the crowning of a new Alaafin on hold, the head of Oyo Prince, Chief Mukaila Afonja, has said that the new Alaafin has not even begun any seclusion rites. Afonja said this while speaking in an interview, assuring that the normal rites that all Alaafin usually undergo will start immediately after the 46th Alaafin comes back from Canada. Governor Seyi Makinde of Oyo State had presented a certificate and a staff of office to the new Alaafin at the executive chamber of the governor's office. You're watching the live broadcast of AM News on Global Television, coming to you from the nation's capital, Abuja. When AM News returns, South Korea investigators recommend impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol by charge with insurrection and abuse of power. We shall bring you these details as well as that of business and sports stories right after this break. Please stay with us. Welcome back, and if you're just tuning in, this is AM News on Global Television. Thank you for staying with us. On our business desk, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, has revealed that the country has the potential to record 5.5% growth in the gross domestic product in the back of sustained reforms. This was revealed at the launch of the 2025 Microeconomic Outlook by the NESG during his presentation. The Chief Economist and Director of Research and Development, NESG, Dr. Olusegun Omisiki, said the NESG believes at the optimal level it embarks on more efficient policy reforms, the Nigerian economy has the potential for the GDP to end at 5.5%. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, LCCI, have preferred actionable solutions aimed at making the nation's economic landscape to benefit businesses, strengthening economic growth and development. President of LCCI, Gabriel Idahosa, made the recommendations at the Chamber's first quarter news conference in Lagos, noting that while the recent gross domestic product growth figures highlighted commendable progress, gaps between current economic realities and the 2005 budgetary goals raised significant concerns. Idahosa said that by leveraging the 2025 budgetary allocations, government should introduce strategic incentives for subnational governments, especially at grassroots levels. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edu, has endorsed the recently announced 50% hike in telecommunications tariff, urging telecom companies to enhance their service quality in line with the price increase. The tariff adjustment, the first in over a decade, was announced by the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC. as part of efforts to revive the telecom sector, which has sparked widespread debate and mixed reactions across the country. Speaking at the ongoing 2025 World Economic Forum in Switzerland, Edun described the hike as a necessary step to sustain telecom industry amid rising inflation and operational cost. Portugal has indicated plans to increase the purchase of liquefied natural gas from Nigeria and the United States as part of efforts to reduce dependence on the already dwindling supplies from Russia. A report quoted the Portuguese Environment Minister, Maria de Gracia Carvalho, as saying the decision was taken following sanctions on Russian oil and gas imported through the pipelines. And on sports, the death toll from a landslide on Indonesia's main island of Java rose to 22, with 4 people still missing as rescuers raced against time and bad weather to find survivors. Intense rainfall on Monday in a mountainous area near Pekalongan, a city in central Java province, sparked the landslide, collapsing bridge and burying cars and houses. Officials say the rescuers started to clean the thick mud and debris from the roads, but the search was paused due to bad weather and potential for further landslides. South Korean investigators have recommended that impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol be charged with insurrection and abuse of power. As a headed prosecutor as a result of their probe into his ill-fated declaration of martial law, the Corruption Investigation Office said Yoon should be charged with leading an insurrection and abuse of power. After a 51-day probe into his December 3rd attempt to suspend civilian rule, the CIO added that it had asked prosecutors to file charges against sitting president, accusing him of conspiring with his former defense minister and other military commanders to disrupt the constitutional order. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has promised to pile $600 billion into U.S. trade and investment as he congratulated Donald Trump on his return to the White House. Prince Mohammed, de facto leader of the world's biggest oil exporter, made the pledge in a phone call following Trump's inauguration. Trump forged close relations with Riyadh in his first term, which is now expected to push Saudi Arabia home to Islam's holiest sites towards normalizing ties with Israel as a major foreign policy objective. In spite of ceasefire in Gaza Strip, several violent encounters have occurred involving armed or masked Palestinians. As Israel military spokesman said, in one such encounter, a man was killed, with the military identifying him as a fighter for the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, adding that in other cases, soldiers fired warning shots to keep masked suspects at a distance. Meanwhile, the army said it is determined to adhere to ceasefire agreements while taking all necessary measures to protect its border from potential threats. Manchester City has announced the signing of Frankfurt forward Omar Mamouche, with Kyle Walker joining AC Milan on loan. As the club step up their rebuild during a disappointing season, Egypt forward Mamouche has signed a 4.5-year contract with Premier League champions for an initial fee of €59 million, $72.6 million, with add-ons worth a potential €4 million. He is City's third signing of the January transfer window, following the arrival of defenders Abdul Kadri and Victor Reyes as manager Pep Guardiola reshapes his squad. Real Madrid are the first football club to top €1 billion in revenue during a single season, fueled by income generated by the revamped Santiago Bernabeu Stadium. Financial expert Delato revealed the order of the club at the top annual football money league stayed the same, with Madrid gulping €1.05 billion, $1.09 billion, followed by Premier League champions Manchester City with €838 million and Paris Saint-Germain with €806 million. Madrid has taken out loans totaling more than €1 billion since 2018 to renovate the Bernabeu, with the aim of turning it into a major source of revenue. Mauricio Pertani has said that he has been handed a welcome selection headache after watching his youthful United States squad wrap up their January training camp with a 3-0 victory over Costa Rica in Florida on Wednesday. Goals from Major League scorer-based players Brian White, Garden Clark and Patrick Ayman completed a confident win by Chitino's side at the Inter and Co Stadium in Orlando. With the games falling outside of an official FIFA window for international fixtures, Pochettino used the friendlies to run the rule over the U.S. talent pool, with most of his Europe-based players unavailable for selection. In tennis, Madison Keys fought back from a set down to shock Iga Swiatek in the nail-biting and set up an Australian Open final against two-time defending champions Alina Sabalenka. The 19 seed battled through a thrilling semi-finals on a final set tie-break against the world number 2 5-7, 6-1, 7-6 after Sabalenka had swept aside Paula Badosa in straight sets. Five-time Grand Slam champion Swiatek had not dropped her since the first round, but was broken 8 times by Keys, who saved the match point on her way to edging a seesaw marathon battle in 2 hours 35 minutes. And that's it on AM News. Here is a recap of our top stories again. The federal government has approved 4 billion naira for conditional cash transfers to vulnerable households in Nigeria, set to commence in February and continue through April. In business, Nigerian Economic Summit Group NESG has revealed that the country has the potential to record 5.5% growth in the gross domestic product on the back of sustained reforms on the foreign scene. The death toll from landslide on Indonesia's main island of Java rose to 22, with 4 people still missing as rescuers raced against time and bad weather to find survivors. And finally, in sports, Manchester City has announced the signing of Eintracht Frankfurt forward Omar Mushmert, with Kyle Walker joining AC Milan on loan. As the club step up their rebuild during a disappointing season. And that's it on Global Television AM News. A quick reminder that Global TV is on DSTV channel 365, on Star Times channel 276, and free to air on Nicomsat. Kindly follow us across all social media platforms now showing on your screen by using @Global TV NG. I am Jumai Manson. Thank you for watching.
Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
Welcome back, everyone. It's been a long day already on the program, but well, it's a Friday. What can we say? Let's turn to something that is not only topical but humanitarian in every definition as well. The 4 billion Naira fund, now earmarked by the federal government, aimed at alleviating the suffering of crisis-hit households, particularly across the northeastern part of the country. Now, the federal government says, amongst other things, it recognizes that the crisis in the northeast, of course, no thanks to insurgency and banditry, has impacted these households in ways that are very devastating. Therefore, the need for this fund to help cushion the impact of this crisis. But then there have been reactions as to, first of all, it's not the first of its kind in terms of funding being made available for what we now call vulnerable households. Some people say the poorest of the poor. The semantics are just a bit interesting. But for this one, it's a 4 billion Naira fund. And Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction, because again, there's a change in the name of that ministry, now says that we want to be able to narrow it down to helping people who are crisis hit, particularly in the northeastern part of the country. Now, opposition political parties are saying that, from what we have seen in recent years, it has always been the case of the ruling party disbursing these funds amongst its members, supporters, cronies, and sympathizers. Therefore, they've called for transparency in the process in which these funds are distributed. But then you're also asking yourself, remember, we once had a minister, in fact, the very first minister, the pioneer minister of this ministry, who at the time also, became a victim of controversies because there were questions around, when you say you have disbursed so and so billions of naira, how did you measure? What were the modalities put in place for this distribution? Can we have something like paper trail evidence of transaction to show that this is the number of persons who had benefited from this scheme? And then the excuse we got at that point, or let's just call it explanation, was, well, most of those people are so poor, have next to no education, of course they don't have bank accounts, so how do you reach them without bank accounts? Therefore we had to do cash, all right, hand this cash to them by hand, and then it was 20,000 naira that was being handed to these people, and then we saw here and there a few videos of people up north who were saying they got some amount of money and so on and so forth. But the real challenge here is how transparent or otherwise the process will be.
And it's very important, like you mentioned something at the beginning when we introduced Global Morning, and we spoke about this particular 4 billion which we give as relief materials for the vulnerable. As you said, how sustainable is this? You know, how well can we sustain this as an individual? We know, like we mentioned, the administration, once you're in power, you tend to do all of these things. But at the same time, I said, do not give me the fish. Teach me how to fish. How long would this go on for? These individuals, are they going to use this money to feed? Is it enough to build a home? Is it enough to get them something tangible to do? It's very important. If it can, oh, beautiful, get them, because these individuals have practically lost everything due to insurgency, due to attacks and all of that, especially those up north. So we need actually make them comfortable as a family. We don't have all of these basic amenities at the all of these things that are important, how their life was before it became in this position in which they find themselves. So it's important that we need to understand that sustainability is key. It's not that, and accountability at the same point. You said many of these individuals do not have bank accounts, so it had to be from one cash to hand. But I think that we really need to look in depth and say to ourselves, would this be sustainable? This individual, or we're just repeating the same cycle. The same people are the ones that are getting these benefits. Whether the ones that got the 20,000 naira before and now they're getting more money again. You see, there's so many accountability that needs to be done. And of course, I will still say the monitoring committee. We need individuals who are actually following neck and neck on this particular issue when it comes to relief, when it comes to bringing succor to this individuals at hand. So it's just unfortunate that this is what it is, unfortunately.
Right. Well, you see, we can have good intention and have a very bad process of executing it, right? So we had the trader money in this country, we had the market money or something, we had all of these nomenclatures around initiatives that were aimed at bettering the life of the everyday citizen, but then they all hit some sort of jam at some point because of the absence of transparency. So at this point, some of the practical questions to be asked would be, will the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction integrate some reputable NGOs in this process to help monitor, to help track how the money trickles down to the beneficiaries across the intended areas or region? That's very important. And then you're asking yourself, by the time it's all said and done, that is when execution has gone full cycle, can we match the fund itself with what has been disbursed or distributed? That's the second question. How do we ensure for a ministry, Juma, that has been enmeshed in controversy after controversy? Let's not forget in a hurry, the first two ministers who have served in this ministry have had issues with the EFCC.
Very true.
Both of them still with the EFCC. I mean, their cases are still in front of the EFCC, not yet resolved, not close to being resolved. This ministry has a third minister right now. So the question is, what will this gentleman do differently from what the two ladies before him, his predecessors, as I like to call them, had done? Now, what's the question? The question is simple. Will you entrench transparency? Will you lead by example? Would you create a system? Would you establish a structure that has the potential of changing the narrative for the better? Because whether you like it or not, the controversy becomes very visible and becomes a talking point, of course, like we're doing now on Global Morning, because it has to do directly with people's survival. I mean, I don't have to live in the Northeast to have an idea or insight into how nasty life has been for them, especially on account of insurgency, the blow has dealt on them. Most of them can't go back to their farms and all of that, right? So you're practically fighting for your life every other day as you wake up. So when money is meant for such persons, are now said to have been diverted, misappropriated, unaccounted for, then you can begin to understand how deep an issue we're dealing with.
Yeah, it is a very deep. For as much as this initiative is it's amazing. Like I said, it's going to bring succor to lots of family households. But how sustainable is it? Let's say from now till 6 months, would they still have enough revenue to sustain themselves and their family? That's why I said it's better. For as much as you want to do this, teach skills, things that they can do when it comes to businesses, something that can keep them abreast with daily living, as in feeding, which is very important. So as much as this initiative is good, but I think this present administration needs to do more for the vulnerables, because we need it to go on a long way when it comes to, keeping families afloat at this time that we find ourselves in Nigeria. But hopefully the needful will be done. 4 billion naira is a lot of money, and I hope how far it will go. How much are we giving each household? We need to know. I mean, the last count was 20,000 naira, but he gives someone that now. Really? So let's just see how much it is. Let's just see.
All right, I think that's a good place to leave this first conversation, everyone. We're taking a quick break, but just to quickly hint that we have a big discussion coming up around the rebasing of the economy. The federal government says it's peaking 2019 to determine what year, how rebasing of the economy should be. Let's keep in mind that Nigeria has suffered a handful of economic recession, particularly starting from 2016. Of course, the COVID-19 also had its impact on our economy, like it did to other parts of the world. Then Nigeria's economy has evolved in the last few years. We've seen issues around creative industry, all right, evolving as well. We've seen the service industry also seeing some tangible amounts of evolution. All of these have now informed the need to rebase Nigeria's economy, and we understand that the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, is leading this initiative. We'll talk to you about those with someone who has a handle on this conversation, but before that, we'll talk a little more on the program. To stay with us.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
All right, thank you, everyone. Our very first conversation, a big one on the program. Today, Nigeria is one country where we have talked time and again about the economy. As a matter of fact, issues around monetary and fiscal policy frameworks have been talking points for many years. Fast forward to when President Bola Tinubu took over office. During his inaugural speech, he had also talked about how that there would need to be what he called house cleaning around fiscal and monetary policy. Today, we have upped the ante a little. We're talking about the gross domestic product now, the GDP, and the need to rebase it. Now, experts say that there are reasons for this. One of them is say Nigeria, the last few years, has experienced a handful of instances of recession. Of course, that's not far-fetched. Add to that, we have seen evolution across new sectors, existing sectors, continue to redefine themselves. And then we can't forget in a hurry as well how the impacts, we should say the adverse impact of COVID-19 redefined and reshaped economies across the world. Nigeria, not an exception. Today, the question is, why has it become so important and some people say imperative for government to, or if you like, the fiscal authorities to say, let's take a second look at the GDP and the need to rebase it. Well, we want to have that conversation in the next couple of minutes. I'm joined by Professor Biodu Adeniyi, a lecturer at the Base University, also a socio-political commentator. Prof, I would say Happy New Year to you officially.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right, so let's begin with the economy. The GDP rebasing. It's not the first time we've heard about this. Of course, in 2019, it was a big conversation with the former president and the former vice president, Muhammadu Buhari, and Professor Yemi Osinbajo. Today, we're back to that conversation, and the National Bureau of Statistics is big in the mix. What are we doing differently as against what we had seen the last few years?
I'm not sure we're doing anything differently. We're just trying to continue with a pattern. Because I think the NBA is also living up to his expectation as the body that's at the springboard of measuring the nation's economy, the capacity of the nation's economy at every point in time. GDP is supposed to be measured on a yearly, 2-yearly, 3-yearly, 4-yearly, or 5-yearly basis, depending on the choice of a country. Ours is usually 5 years, and you need to understand your GDP at every point in time to be able to know how your economy is performing in terms of the aggregate sum of consumption, distribution, and production. To help investment decision, whether local or foreign. Countries do this time after time. The United States is about to do its own. The last time we did that was about 5 years ago. Now we are making projections. Where we did it, we were like the top in Africa. Now we are set to be the 5th. But of course, we know there are other realities that have emerged within the Nigerian context. Digital economy has exploded. Pension funds is out there. The creative sector is also exploding. All these have to be captured. Yes, there's a controversial element of capturing illegalities. That's the controversial. We're not sure yet if MBS is going to calculate that. But even if they do, it's not going to be the first time because the United Kingdom did it in 2014. But be that as it may, it's important, and for us to understand, to know what our capacity is at the moment. We're just guessing. And if we are guessing, faced with new realities that are yet to be integrated into the GDP, it will help economic projections, and of course, investment decision.
Prof, as you know, many people don't seem to be very comfortable with conversations around data in Nigeria. They say Nigeria is not a country that is particularly reputable for being big on data. Most times when data is released, we have seen even by the NBS itself, not just by the World Bank or IMF, even the federal government finds a way to rail against it. So how are we going to deal with that in this instance?
Well, it's not unexpected, and it's not peculiar to Nigeria. Data can be controversial because it's a social activity, it's a social scientific activity, that is not necessarily cast in stone. It's not like the animate science. It goes through evaluation, and the evaluation are necessarily done by humans. They can be subject to human frailties, But what we do in research and this kind of measurement is to try to be as close as possible to reality, to try to strive towards objectivity. Once you can assure that or guarantee that, with the right choice of methodologies or techniques that you are adopting to arrive at your data, then you can be reasonably comfortable that you are doing your best and allow for evaluation. As the case could be. So if we controvert it, it's not something that is necessarily extraordinary, but of course we need to have a figure to work with at every point in time in different respects, in different sectors. And the GDP is even a very, very significant one. The Nigerian case might be very peculiar, if we are controversing data, because sometimes these things, are steeped in political interpretations. And when there are political interpretations, it's about a multiplicity of interests, conflicting. Against that background, you respect differing opinions, but when those opinions are differing, we shouldn't detract from the bigger picture of the need to have some figures to work with.
There has always been this, if you like, a bit of a bout between Nigeria and South Africa. Maybe sometimes they add other countries like Egypt and Morocco in terms of who has the largest economy and all of that. Talk to our viewers, Prof, about how GDP elements is vital or pivotal to the size of an economy.
Yeah, it's actually a very important point that you raised. We are not supposed to be underperforming in Africa on account of our population. Nigeria is the largest black nation on planet Earth after Brazil. And of course, in Africa, no one is close to us. No country is close to us. So we're supposed to leverage our population to advance our economic prowess, just like China is doing, just like India is doing. Malaysia is doing it, Indonesia is doing it. So if they're able to do it, then why not us? And because of that, there's this naturally high expectation of Nigeria, and our ability to project our economy beyond any other country in Africa. But of course, we also know about the history of South Africa, and we know the dominance of capital in that country, and we know their possibilities, how they are very good players in international economic politics. So they have also leveraged on that, to emerge as maybe the first. Do not forget, Egypt is coming permanently on the rise. They are doing well. Egypt is higher than us now. Morocco is also on the rise, and of course Tunisia. These countries have successfully challenged us, but they have challenged us because we dropped the ball in many regards. Okay, in the last 5 years after the last rebasing, we dropped the ball at the level of mismanagement, pilfering of resources, exiting of companies, declining productivity, manufacturing, our inability to harness our potentials in steel development, insecurity, which has been affecting agricultural production. So all these sectors have been grossly affected, leading to the decline of our GDP. But of course, we also have new areas that have emerged. The digital economy, I mentioned it, the creative sector, I mentioned it, the pension fund, I mentioned it, and so many other sectors too that we can now integrate into the proposed rebasing, such that even though we did not emerge as first, our work will be somewhere maybe second and third, go up a little bit. But it is not so much about numbers, about first, second, third, or whatever. It is of no benefit really if we are first and we are not seeing the reflection of a big GDP in the economy, in the life of the people. What matters is how the GDP translates into improving the well-being of the people. That should be
quality of life.
The quality of life, that should be the focus really. And I want to believe that government is not lost on this, and that's why the MBS imagines that this is the right time to do it. It's not a one-off job from the way I understand it. It's something that has been they've been doing over the years, measuring it, deploying all techniques, the appropriate statistics, then of course to culminate into the eventual announcements, where all the pieces in the jigsaw have been properly fitted.
Again, Prof, there are people who will argue and say, I mean, rebuilding the economy is just about measurement, determining metrics for measurements and nothing more. Let's talk about, if any, practical ways in which this sort of exercise or initiative helps to boost or drive economic growth.
Well, it does help, if you know the factors that contribute to the growth of a nation's GDP. We're talking about production, boom in production. We're talking about boom in consumption. Consumption means that an economy is reflated. And when an economy is reflated, multipliers are triggered. And when multipliers are triggered, the people are active, their earning power is enhanced, and their ability, to acquire goods and services is engendered. And of course, when all this is happening, it is adding up to the quality of their life. It means that employment is on the rise, disappointment is declining, disillusionment is also a decline, Simply, there's a reason why people want to go to the United States of America, for instance, because, production is high, manufacturing is sophisticated, and of course, steel development is wonderful. What about oil and gas sector? It's also booming. Particularly all sectors, are booming in the United States. That's why it's the #1 economy. And forget about the tantrums of Donald Trump. It still remains a world power when it comes to the economic prosperity, irrespective of the challenge of China. And if you go to China, look at production, look at manufacturing, look at their creativity, and see how saturated the local economy of China is, and that's why they are dominating the export world.
Right.
You know why? That's also why it is a destination for many transnational companies willing to outsource their subsidiaries. And of course, many companies, bigger companies, have subsidiaries, branches in China. Sometimes they even domicile their production network in that country, on account of their sophistication, at the level of availability of labor, at the level of innovation and initiative, and the opportunity, to be creative, with goods that they produce, So, and that's why the GDP of China is also very high. I can't remember the number now, but of course, GDP is a major pointer, to how you want to quantify all of these things put together. And sometimes, it also puts you on a better scale, better pedestal to welcome foreign investors, because there's an indicator to see, it's an indicator of how your economy is performing, and helps them to make decisions whether to come to a client or not.
We're going to take a break shortly, but just before that, you mentioned the pensions funds a while ago. We've seen a lot of controversy around that, right from the days of Maina, for example. And then we've seen how that one day you hear that some chunk of the pensions funds has been invested in maybe the construction sector or some other very key sector, and so on and so forth. As of today, there's still a bit of, if you like, sway here and there around the pension system generally in Nigeria. You go to the digital economy that you mentioned, you go to the creative industry that you mentioned. Experts say most of these persons or these entities still operate within the informal space. In light of this move now to rebase the GDP, how do we also address that? It's pretty much like when you talk about the tax system in Nigeria. We say, we need to bring more people, more business into the tax net. But it has been more talk, less action or results.
Yeah, I agree with you. More talk, more pronouncement, less action. And it speaks to the bigger question of our deficiency in implementation, in execution of policies. But the fact that this is the case does not mean that it will remain the case or that we will not improve in the future. The pension culture was actually growing more under the Obasanjo regime, and we have grown from then on. It was worse. When in life, right, when you have a challenge, you find a solution to it. That solution breeds another challenge. You also find a solution to it.
So the chain
continues, And of course, within the matrix, within the circumstance, there's a marginal improvement. The curve keeps going up if you keep the focus, towards stability and sustainability. That's how processes are, and that's how the pension industry also is. I'm not sure the kind of lack in control mechanism that we had in the Nina case is still present now.
Right.
We will have blocked it. I want to believe that it's been blocked, you know. The pension concept is a very good concept. Anywhere in the world, you know, when somebody works by 60, if you're not physically tired, you're probably emotionally tired. And you want to go and rest, and you want, but going to rest does not mean you want to exit the world. There has to be ways in which you can survive. So the idea of pension is for you to prepare for your future, for old age, when you become incapacitated, probably, or when you become weak, probably, or when you become, you know, emotionally disadvantaged, probably. You know, so any of these life occurrences can be the case with any worker. That's why it is preparatory, you know, to retirement, as the case could be. We may not be getting it right now, but I don't think we're doing badly in trying to improve on the structure, the institution of PENCOM,
right,
as the case could be.
All right, we're taking a quick break now, everyone. We're looking at rebasing the GDP, what exactly the government is doing in this regard and what the implications, short, medium, and long term for Nigeria. We're back shortly to continue with the discussion. Do stay with us. All right, so Prof, let's have the second lap of this conversation, right? Now we're talking GDP, and because the economy is dynamic, we're always going to have to measure from time to time, regardless of whether it's going to be on a yearly basis, 2-yearly basis, or whatever choice we make going forward. Diversification of the economy has been here for a while. Just yesterday, the Speaker of House of Representatives, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, was saying that we actually made a fundamental mistake once we abandoned agriculture and migrated, as it were, to crude. Of course, that's a no-brainer. We've had that conversation for a few decades now. But be that as it may, what kind of conversation should we be having about diversification of our economy in light of this sort of exercise of rebasing the GDP from time to time?
Good question. I think if we do a rebasing, we know where we are strongest, you know, or where we are stronger as a nation, you know, in the sector that is most productive, right, most effective. And what we know, like you said, is a no-brainer, that is the oil and gas sector. But we moved to the oil and gas sector because of mass predilection for the least option. We were agriculturally productive before, but we found oil in 1959, and one thing led to the other. It became the easiest option, you know, and so we never looked back thereafter. Agriculture suffered, state development suffered. You know, custom and excise too. Also suffered, and because became a monocultural economy. But we know oil is also going through vagaries now. Sometimes very volatile. Sometimes subject to new development. We are struggling to keep our identity as an oil producing country now, in view of new technologies of mobility, new technologies of doing things. We are stepping into the new world of artificial intelligence, and the challenge is now on us, not to be overly reliant on oil, and that's why I think that government is also trying to be sophisticated through the tax reform system. Remember, there are some countries in the world without oil, landlocked countries prospering. Jordan, landlocked, or relatively landlocked, but prospering. What about the United Kingdom? United Kingdom, it's a small country, but the bulk of its revenue comes from tourism. And near home here, Rwanda is landlocked. Why is it prospering? Why is there stability, irrespective of the questions that we ask around this democracy? It's because of tourism, And of course, Rwanda is a major destination now for Africa and even global migrants, people going for conferences and all of that. So diversification is not just, shouldn't just end at the level of pronouncement, but at the level of painstaking, but should continue at the level of painstaking efforts towards realizing it. We are a well-resourced country, so many mineral resources available to us. The mining sector is a sector we didn't even mention. We mentioned steel development and agriculture. What are we doing with our mining resources? They are being purified just like oil, oil theft and all of that. So our problem is largely about management and to a very large extent leadership. Oftentimes we cannot depart from the question of leadership. It's like the story that we tell in fairy tales those days that often ends at the desk of the tortoise. So in this circumstance, leadership is like the tortoise. Every time we do analysis, it will end up at leadership. Because we know what leadership has been able to do in United Arab Emirates, for instance, what it is doing in Rwanda, and in historic terms we know what leadership did in the United Kingdom, in China, in Singapore, that we often like to mention, even in Saudi Arabia, deep into history. So leadership is critical, to the propelling of systems and societies to get things done properly. What about human resources? Apart from the huge size of our population, what about the sophistication of our people? Of course, these are exemplified in their performances anytime they exit this country. What they do over there, how much are we harnessing them? Other nations leverage on their diasporic resources, because apart from their physical experiences, and they're also exposed at the level of knowledge which they can transfer for the benefit of their origin, their homeland. India has done it, South Korea has done it, even Chile has done it. Ethiopia here does not joke with it. Then, even before we talk about the traditional classical diasporic community, the Jews, Israel has the return law, which encourage Jewish diasporic members to return home, and they are incentivized to come and invest in Israel. Yes, and largely you can see how prosperous that nation is at the level of innovation, at the level of science, because of government initiative, government motivation. These things are critical to development. It's not a stroll in the park. Efforts, we have to be intentional about these things. And intentionality does not come with one-off pronouncement, but consistency and keeping of the focus matters. But unfortunately, we are characterized with a system where leaders think that once in power, it should be for their benefit, and of course that's become really systemic, absolutely endemic, but not irredeemable.
When you talk about reducing the GDP, Prof, apparently you're having an economic conversation. Talking about the economy, Rwanda, its neighbor, in this case, Kenya, of course, is now saying that, look, we would allow Africans across these continents to come to our country visa-free, as against what they used to be. And people have looked at countries like Kenya, like Rwanda, to say it will appear the beacon in Africa, economically, socially, and otherwise, will likely be the the eastern part of the continent, all right, the East Africa end, of course, these two countries being on the forefront and all of that. Should Nigeria, from what you see today, follow that model?
One is Nigeria should be a leader in Africa. Our population is a natural advantage, and I do not see how we cannot take initiative most of the time for other countries to follow. Let me tell you the major disappointment that many African countries have. That rather than they going to Europe or going to developing countries in Asia and the South Pacific, they should rather have been coming to Nigeria if we were serious. Because they see us as a big brother, and they're largely disappointed sometimes when we fail them. Imagine Nigeria, for instance, not having a national career. And of course, it's even Togo here, or is it in the Republic of Nibo, that has ASCAI, or that has an educational base for ASCAI. It's Ethiopia that has Ethiopian Airline. There's Kenya Airways, there's Rwanda Air, but we don't have any. These things actually, they feel disappointed that we're not managing our system well. For them to ape and idolize us. So if we are leading the way in many respects, it's actually shameful, but at the same time, we're not supposed to break bones. What we're supposed to do is to look for ways out of it. And of course, you can see what Rwanda is doing. Most of the time, we go to Rwanda for training, for holidays and conferences. Conferences that become an alternative destination for Europe and the Americas, which is a kind of thing that Nigeria has the opportunity of offering the rest of Africa. But it comes back to the questions that we keep asking, the question of leadership. How do we get it right? And when we're talking about leadership, we shouldn't really be talking about leadership at the center, maybe at the presidential level. What about leadership at the sovereign, at the subnational, at the the agency level? What are they doing? There can be exemplars. We have seen them in the past. These exemplars are more than enough, to lead others to the right path.
Let's begin to wrap up, Prof. Let's come back home. Ajaokuta Steel. Yes, we've talked about the steel industry in Nigeria, what we can do with that alone, in addition to whatever we realize from oil, sale of crude and all of that. At the twilight of 2023, Vice President, Kashif Shettima had said that upon completion, amongst other benefits, that facility will be able to create a minimum of 500,000 jobs, and that's huge for just one sector. But this is more than 1 year and counting, not so much has been heard. When we were told that the original company, the company that originally set up that facility had been contracted again to say, let's reevaluate and see how we can get this thing back on the road. I think many Nigerians who understand the history of Ajaokuta Steel Complex thought they had a reason to heave a sigh of relief. When we look over our shoulder today, is there any hope in sight?
Well, it really comes back to managers, leaders, what they want to do for us. But if you look at the history of steel development, I think it goes back to the 14th, 15th, 16th century. And if you could travel to some of these developed countries, you see steel produced some 200, 300 years ago, still standing. You just marvel, and you simply be filled with regrets where we have not been able to get things right, as a people. Because, excuse me, yes, if we say that we were enslaved, we were colonized, we are in the 21st century where we have the opportunity of benefiting from some of these countries, at least in contemporary times, just like Singapore has done, Malaysia has done, and just like China has also done, because at the point in time, we are at the same level of development with these countries, right? In the 60s, 70s, we're nearly at par with United Arab Emirates, So what do they do differently that we cannot do? And of course, Ajaokuta Steel development is a case in point. And if you travel to that place, you go to that place, you will, I don't want to use the word pity, you will just marvel, at how mindless we can be as a people, sinking that kind of humongous resources, into earth and not being able to earn resources, earn income from it. Huge investment. Russians did it in the 80s, in the late 70s, 80s, in the period of Shagari, and since then it's been one story after the other. But investigate deeply, it is one cycle of corruption after the other. So it remains corruption remains a big elephant in the room, but we have to be serious about resolving, and how do we resolve it? There are mechanisms in place. We know the criminal justice system is anti-corruption, but it should go beyond apprehension, prosecution, and sanctioning, to the implementation of sanctions so that they can be deterrents. But in our situation, we have all these mechanisms, they are implemented in the breach, and there's no commitment to implementation. In our system, we have a system where, instead of the law ruling, it is man that is ruling.
Right.
In the sense that, the bigger you are, the more likely you are going to escape, the hooks or in the law, but the lesser you are as a person, the more likely you are going to be entrapped. And of course, it shouldn't be so. The law should be a balance, such that everybody is equal within it. So when there are no sanctions, people just feel there shouldn't be any hindrance, to committing infractions. We know countries where sanctions are meted. China, the reward for corruption. There's no reason for you to be corrupt, or even if you want to try it. If you try it, you are apprehended. You know the repercussions. Singapore, what the repercussion is. Even the United States, that is a free society, we know how the law works. Yes, we know that in recent time with Trump, we've seen some kind of revision, but even then the law is still strong.
Right.
Now, what point are we making here? We're simply saying that we probably also need to strengthen our institutions. Our institutions are weak, and of course they are there, they are in place, rightly so, but they are weak in terms of actualizing the mandates for which they were set, because institutions are the drivers of social systems, not human beings, If you leave social systems to the precedents, the peculiarities of humans alone, the whims and caprices, it will begin to flow left, right, and center without any interaction. But if systems work through the instruments of institutions, of course there will be order, and there will be succession, and there will be stability and sustainability of the case could be.
All right, Prof, let's wrap up from where we started from. Now we're talking about basing the GDP. Every other country does the same. And you can't talk about the size of an economy without reference to the GDP of that country. We have not done this for a few years now. Obviously, we lagged. How do we ensure that we close that gap in such a way that we don't have to play, catch up?
Well, just to be consistent, we're not doing badly in terms of some innovation. The young population is actually doing well, right? They are booming. Remembering that we are a nation of over 200 million people. Many of them are young people. They're very innovative. They're taking advantage of the new media, new technologies of doing things, artificial intelligence, the creative economy is booming as a result of new technologies. So this is also generating economic activity, leading to increase production, distribution, and consumption. And these are things that boost a nation's economy. So I don't see us going backward in that regard. It's going to continue, because technologies of doing things, have always been on the progressive side, even from the time of the telegraph. You imagine how we have moved from the telegraph to where we are now, to and all of that. So it's going to continue, and of course, if it continues, we cannot be excluded from that matrix. The young ones are also there to continue to provide leadership in this field. Out of 9 unicorns in the world, we have about 4 or 5 in Nigeria. That's a major statement, So the digital economy is also there. The pension fund that we mentioned is also there. So there will be continuity in this regard. And that's why, again, people make the argument that what government needs to do is to create a movement environment for the private sector to thrive. Because the private sectors are usually drivers of a nation's economy. Even nations that that had command economies in those days, nations of the East, Russia, China, they have liberalized. We saw what liberalization did to China. Apart from the rise of billionaires, we also see how industries have burgeoned. What about Russia too? Apart from the rise of billionaires, we have seen how they are progressing. Even though, also enabling them to face multiple sanctions, from the West. Of course, liberalization is helpful to this, and having liberalization by encouraging the thriving of the private sector. And how do you do this? Creating a liberal environment, ensuring that your tax system is not stifling, ensuring there's security, having policies, antitrust policies, protecting the weak from the poor, even though you are not discouraging competition. So all this and the right frame of mind on the part of leadership to ensure that their motive, their policy direction, are tailored towards satisfying others as against itself. If we have all these things in mind, I don't think we will decline for them.
All right, Professor Biodun Adeni, thank you so very much for sharing these valuable insights today. We'll take a quick break, everyone. We'll continue to keep an eye out on the rebasing of the GDP and see how the dynamics will be in play in the days, weeks, and months ahead. We're back shortly with the rest of Global Morning.
is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and internationals.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
And the president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning. All right, now at this point, we have to wrap it up on the program Global Morning. And of course, beautiful insight with Professor Adeniyi here on the program, talking about a lot of pressing issues making rounds. I mean, I'm sure you did justice to that. His points were apt, don't you think?
Yes, of course. As always is the case with Professor Adeniyi. And the fact that has to do with the economy.
Exactly.
For many persons, this kind of conversation is complicated.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You know, elitist. In the final analysis is about the Nigerian, right? How do you make life better for them economically?
Exactly.
How do you make them understand how their money ought to work for them? How leaders ought to put their money, Nigeria's money, that is, where their mouth is and all that. I think that's essentially what it is.
Yeah, it's very important. We have leaders who are our mouthpiece to make life better and easier at this point. But, you know, that seems not to be the case at this moment. A lot of leaders are going contrary to what Nigerians want. A lot of Nigerians are not agreeing to those terms and conditions. But at the same run, let's see what the NLC have in stock when it comes to these high telecommunication, the tariff involved. Let's just see how well that plays. But like I mentioned in the morning, like we said, as long as it's value for money, I'm good. And as long as my rollover, I don't have to go through all the stress of, you know, putting in the same work and all of that. No one has time to read all of that, really. Everyone is busy. We're trying to make money as
quick cash.
Did I say quick cash or legitimate and smooth cash?
You snapped your fingers, so that was suggestive of quick.
Exactly, but you know, everyone is in a hurry. Haven't you noticed? We're all in a hurry. Everything quickly and okay, of course, legitimate. It's a weekend. Let's slow down a bit. And at this point, we have to draw the curtains on the program Global Morning. But of course, Global Morning comes up tomorrow. Also, it's a weekend. It's the weekend, and it has been an amazing time. Thank you all so much for allowing us to use your television set. And I hope you learned one or two today. And of course, you will go about, do the right thing, which is very important. And of course, the dailies, the newspaper, go out and get yourself a read and know what is happening and the issues making round. Thank you all so much for being a part of the program. Global Morning. I am Jumai Mantle, and my co-host that wears amazing glasses.
I'm Uyagumo. We're delighted to have you join us here today.
Bye-bye.
Toll from flooding.